It's time for Reason.
But if they disagree with you, then you're not actually promoting freedom of speech, you're actually promoting hate speech. Because in today's times, anything that offends you, that makes you feel uncomfortable, is no longer a freedom of speech, but is now hate speech. If you say, I love Donald Trump, that is now considered fascist hate speech because you're probably a white supremacist and you don't have any place in society.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Oh, yeah. Welcome into the Voice of Reason. What a weekend it's been, and what a heck of a start to a Monday morning as we roll right along, broadcasting live out of Wichita, Kansas, here across the entire Mid-America region. Welcome into the show. This is the Voice of Reason. I am Andy Hoosier. It's an honor to have you along, as it usually is, as it is every single day that we had the program. Great to have you with us. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK, right here on the Big Talker, KQAM. I believe we may be simulcasting on KGPT TV. I'm not sure, as we are having some internet issues here at the studio this morning. So we've been having fun scrambling with that. As you heard, the weather reports not necessarily playing the way they need to, and things happening. Hey, you know what? It is a Monday, and we'll get those all fixed up right for you. So hopefully we are simulcasting on KGPT TV. Hopefully we are we do not have the Facebook Live feed up rolling right now, but we will hopefully be able to get that up for you very soon. Other than that, baby, we got a lot to get to. It is man, I cannot believe it. It is a Monday already. Let's get you set up. Let's get you pumped up for the day, get you excited, set the tone for not just today, but for the entire week, because it's going to be a fun one as we are wrapping up the month of March already.
Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started.
That's what I'm saying. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, it's open lines to you. What's on your mind? It was a heck of a weekend as we saw the threat, the potential almost threat of President Donald Trump, as he said he potentially could veto that $1.3 trillion omnibus spending bill. Ended up signing it. He did say that he would never sign a single thing like that ever again. And again, I know that a lot of individuals, we talked about this on Friday, a lot of people said this was kind of the doom and gloom. This was going to be the end-all, be-all for a lot of our elected officials for their support for President Trump going into 2020 for a re-election. A lot of people not happy about this one. And I try, because I am the eternal optimist, as I always am, I tried to explain how, no, it's not a good thing. Yes, it is a bad thing. But at the same time, it is only for 6 months. And we have a very bright future ahead of us as long as we stay focused on the priorities of what we need to focus on. Now, President Trump would have vetoed this bill. It would have been a very good thing. I would have loved it. Absolutely loved it. First off, I would have been able to kind of rub it a little bit into the never-Trumpers' faces of, all your conservatives that we still love, many of them supported it, unfortunately. And then the person that you say is not conservative would have ended up vetoing it. Now, he did sign it, but did make the warning. This is never going to happen again. This is never going to be signed again. Something like this will never happen again. And that's true. Hopefully, we're not put in a position to where we have to be worrying about signing something like that or vetoing it and shutting down the government again, because we're going to be working on appropriations bills. So we see a very bright future. What we need to focus on two things right now. Number one, we need to focus on the appropriations process. As I had mentioned many times on Friday, we have, 11, 12 appropriations categories that we're going to be looking at. We can start weeding out some of the porculus. We're going to weed out some of the special interests. We're going to start consolidating some of the budgets. We can start figuring out what needs to be in there and what doesn't need to be in there. We have that opportunity. It's going to happen. Number two is that we need to focus on the midterm elections coming up in November. We need to, if we're going to primary some individuals out, we need to focus on that right now, which hopefully we look at more of the moderate Republicans, many of the senators that maybe have supported this with praise, as opposed to saying, yeah, we had to vote for it, I had to vote for it, but it wasn't necessarily the best bill in the world. And instead of saying, hey, this was fantastic, I love it, maybe let's ram this through. There's a big difference there. And we need to find out which one is which so that way we can support the right person and not support certain individuals that end up saying something like that. And we need to maintain a Republican majority in both chambers come November. Not just maintain it, but we need to get more of a majority. These types of bills are done because there are just enough Democrats to obstruct, there are just enough Democrats to try and block, and there are just enough Democrats to have enough influence to be able to include a bunch of crap porculus into these types of bills that we don't need or want. We need to have a good 65 Republicans in the Senate to be able to have a majority, and we need to be able to start weeding out some of the moderate Republicans in the House. That's the focus we have to have nationwide. Now, this 6-month omnibus bill was not a good bill in any way, shape, or form. I never supported the bill. My point that I had tried to make on Friday, that I will continue to try and make, was that yes, it sucks. Yes, it's terrible, but there are bigger fish to fry right now, and we need to keep our focus. We need to keep our eye on the ball. We need to keep the target on the right back of the right individuals and the right products and the right issues and the right agenda. And that right now is the appropriations. This is only a 6-month bill. Yes, it increases spending massively. Yes, it gets us into debt almost $1 trillion more. Yes, I get that. It's only for 6 months. It's going to be okay. After the 6 months, then we're going to go back to, hopefully, if they do what they say they're going to do, back to the appropriation side where we're going to see hopefully close to 20% of that go away. And just imagine that for the first time, we have an opportunity to go from a massive omnibus bill, the same process that we've been doing for the last how many years, 15 years, and then we're going to shrink it down to go back to appropriate. You know what? Military funding? Here's the military funding bill. No more omnibus bill of saying that we have to support the military right now, and if we don't get the military spending, then the military is going to hurt, and then we as the Republicans are going to be shunning all the veterans and everybody that's fighting for our country. No more are we going to have to worry about that, because the social spending on food stamps is not going to be included into the same bill as the military. Progressives love that. They absolutely love that. Because now they can throw in all of their porculus, all their special interests, all the spending that they want to spend on, and then they can turn around and throw us a bone with some military and say, hey, if you don't fund this, that means you don't like the military. Excuse me? And that's where we're at right now. That's where we've been for a really long time, and it's time for that to stop. And once we see that stop, then we can see us going back to the way it needs to be going back to, with actual funding for the military, funding for social programs, funding for domestic spending, funding for infrastructure if they want to do that, funding for whatever else they want to find. It's got to be allotted into their own appropriations. Then the departments and the agencies come back and they grovel and they try and wine and dine and they plead and they beg and they kiss the shoes of every elected official trying to beg for the little bit of money that they're going to try and get. That's the way the process needs to be. That's the way the system needs to be. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If President Trump would have vetoed it, do you think it would have helped or hurt the process? I'm curious to get your take on this, as I heard two different ways, and I'm very interested to see on which way it would have gone. Some say that it was good President Trump did sign this one, because if the Democrats would have gone to a shutdown, then it would have potentially helped them in the primaries and even the general election come November. If he would have vetoed it, then it potentially could have hurt the Republicans by shutting down the government. I don't see that, because we, for the first time, have been able to actually control the discussion and control the situation. I don't know. At the same time, by improving the lifestyle of the military and improving salaries for the, 2.5% for the military salaries, I think we did some good there. Congressman Ron Estes for the 4th Congressional District here in the Wichita area, I know has been getting a lot of heat for supporting this bill. He called in on the show on Friday, out of the blue. He was listening to the program in Washington, D.C. He wanted to chime in. He wanted to correct some of the misinformation that was out there on the bill. He wanted to explain his position, whether you agree or disagree with him on the position. The fact is that he called in on his own accord, and he explained why he supported the bill. Well, yeah, it increased spending, and it was not the best thing. It did do some good in certain areas, and it allows us to focus on the appropriations without doing, just imagine, and his case was that if we had voted down the omnibus bill, we would have gone to a potential government shutdown. We would have tried to talk about another way, another different omnibus bill. We would have been bickering about it. We would have been debating more about it. It would have been another vote in a few days, and the omnibus bill would have potentially gone for maybe another month, and then they would have debated it again, and it could have been an ongoing thing until they would have not had any opportunity to be able to debate on the appropriations the way that we need to start focusing on. So that was his argument. And he said, yeah, it's really absurd with the amount of spending in here. He warned us about it Wednesday of last week and said, yeah, you know what? There's going to be people coming to the table with special interest. They're going to try and throw in there. It's going to be a porculous bill. It's going to be a ridiculous thing. Unfortunately, though, they're ramming it through the 11th hour, and we don't have an opportunity to change that. He made that very clear. So I'm going to play that interview coming up in about 10 minutes after the bottom of the hour, the interview that we had with Congressman Ron Estes and his take on, yeah, it wasn't the best bill, but we needed to do it to move on to the next thing. And his explanation on that. So we'll play that at the bottom of the hour. We'll get your take on that as we are now in full swing with this omnibus $1.3 trillion spending bill for the next 6 months. Not an ideal situation, but we can focus on the priority for the long term. We need to remember as conservatives that we have the long-term goal always at our foot. And whether we lose a small battle temporarily, whether we win a small battle temporarily, whether it's a temporary bill or a temporary budget, it's only temporary, and we need to be able to work towards the longer end goal. 316-721-8255. Also, we got some sales tax information coming up for the state of Kansas with our legislators, and of course the walkout or the March for Our Lives that happened over the weekend as well. I'm very curious to get your thoughts on this. They say it's for school safety. Everybody just talked about nothing but gun control, and I'm pretty sure that that was pretty much useless in the discussion. So we'll talk about that a little bit later as well. Your thoughts and calls. It's a Monday. Let's make it happen today. What do you say?
Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Mid-America Network.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason. 24 minutes past the hour. It is a Monday morning. Let's go ahead and start it off the right way. What do you say? I know Mondays are kind of the day where things just go kind of haywire, allegedly. But we're going to try and start you off the best way that we know how to do so, right? 316-721-8255. I do want to hear from you today on the spending bill that happened on Friday. I do want to get to the march out that happened over the weekend as well. But right now, as we're spending. Now, look, this is not a conservative bill. This is not a decent bill. This is not a good bill. It had a few little perks in there that were nice. But we need to focus on the fact that it is not a good bill. With that being said, is this the one to fall on our swords on? No. And that's all I want to try and reiterate. It's not the one for us to fall onto our swords on and stay on that hill and fight for that one. It is a short-term bill, and there's nothing we can do about that. Now, there is a headline from the Topeka Capital Journal as Senator Moran and Senator Pat Roberts praise the $1.3 trillion spending bill as an end to political crossfire. U.S. senators from Kansas hailed the passage early Friday of the $1.3 trillion spending bill that avoids the risk of another government shutdown that ends a series of short-term funding measures. President Donald Trump agreed to sign the massive bill after threatening to veto over a lack of funding for a border wall. See, here's the thing. President Trump threatened to veto it, which I would have been in full support of, but he was doing it for the wrong reason, which means the mindset and the priorities of what the conservatives, even President Trump, have were in the wrong. Even when he was talking about vetoing it, yeah, it's good he wanted to veto, but it was vetoing for the wrong reason. The border wall is important, but he was saying that it was because that the Democrats had forgotten about the DACA recipients. We're not there to take care of the DACA recipients. We're not there to be the emotional touchy-feely, oh, you're a DACA recipient, let's try and help you out. That's not our purpose. That's not our goal. Our purpose is to take care of American citizens, and spending them into oblivion, getting them further into debt is not the right way. That's what he should have said. Along with saying, if we are going to spend a crap ton of money and we're just going to increase spending all over the place and we're going to have these special interests, then why aren't we funding the wall to the fullest extent along with that and just make it? If we're going to throw in special interests for every single progressive and what they wanted, why would we not throw in our special interest money like funding for the wall? We give them everything while we take very little. and then we still have an out-of-control spending bill, and then we vote for it. It doesn't make any sense to me. I would have loved to have seen veto it, but it needed to be for the right reasons, not just because of the fact that, hey, I want to take care of DACA recipients. Your thoughts on this? 316-721-8255. Let's go to the phones. Good morning. What's your name?
Hey, happy Monday.
Myron, how are you, sir?
I am great.
Good.
I appreciate both you having an interview last week, and then I appreciate Ron calling in on Friday. What I want people to know is Saturday morning, Ron Estes is out meeting with constituents. Anybody that has a yay or an nay or an opinion on what he's doing, I encourage him to call the office. He's one of the best people I know about listening.
Sure.
And he's also, like you say, he explains it's not what he wanted, but we did get some good things. We got the military. We got a number of things that, let's face it, kind of special projects that Republicans wanted. And we gave the Democrats a little bit, but we didn't give them DACA.
Well, we didn't give them DACA, but we gave them a lot of spending in a lot of different areas. I mean, when Chuck Schumer comes out and says this is a fantastic bill and they love it just because of the fact that we increased our debt by close to $1 trillion, I mean, it's not a good bill in any way, shape, or form. It has a few small little perks, but I would gladly give up those perks in the sense of not increasing our debt by close to $1 trillion. But you're right. I mean, I have the utmost respect for a congressman who doesn't go onto a national media outlet and tries to justify himself or just sends out a press release, which he did send a press release as well, but also came to his local district, his constituency in his district, called into a show out of the blue. I mean, I did not reach out to him at all. He called up and said, you know what, you're right. This isn't a good bill. This is my justification on why I voted for it. This is the reasoning for it. There's a lot of misinformation about this bill. No, I did not like it, but this is where my thought process is because I'm focused on the appropriations of what's coming soon. Let's get this potential government shutdown out of the way for the next 6 months while the end of the fiscal year happens, and let's focus on a real budget. And that was his reasoning for it. And whether you agree or disagree with him is fine, but you got to respect the fact that he's probably one of the most transparent congressmen that I've seen, especially here in the state of Kansas.
Yeah, I just think that people who have an opinion or have something they want to say to him need to find out where he is, where he's going to be, and tell him. He listens, he cares, he's doing the best he can. Mm-hmm. So, but he does need to hear from us.
Sure. No, absolutely. Good, bad, and indifferent. I saw a lot of social media posts saying that they had reached out to him and expressed their anger and frustration with that bill. So, I mean, he is getting both ends of the stick on that one, on whether you agree or disagree. Myron, I appreciate it, my friend. We got to take a break here in a second. I do want to play that interview when we come back. It's about 10 minutes long, and it is his interview when he called in out of the blue on Friday, explaining the bill, talking about some of the fake news that's coming out about the bill that's floating around there. For number one, being about the Second Amendment, having gun control measures in the bill, which was not the case in any way, shape, or form. Also, when it came to Planned Parenthood, yes, they're getting money. No, the government's not allotting any money to them. It's coming in through weird grants that's coming in from different sides outside of the government. Plus, it also gives the opportunity for President Trump to begin defunding Planned Parenthood on his accord without Congress blocking it. So those are really good news, pieces of good news out of this bill. We'll talk about that when we come back. This is The Voice of Reason.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Hey, welcome into it. It is a Monday morning. Appreciate you hanging out with us today, right here on the Big Talker, KQAM, across the entire Mid-American network. We love having you along today. Let's start it off the right way. What do you say? 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. It's going to be a fun one today. I want to play our interview that we had. Congressman Ron Estes, he joined us on Friday as he was listening to the show. He had called in out of the blue. I mean, I did not reach out to him. It was not my instigating to say, hey, call in and justify that. No, he called in on his own and said, hey, there's a lot of misinformation that's coming out about this bill. There are some good aspects to it. Yes, it's not the best bill. No, I probably wouldn't have created something like this on my own, but it's got some good aspects to it, and it allows us to focus on the priorities of what's to come over the next couple of months, which is the appropriation. So I want to play that interview. This was Congressman Ron Estes on Friday here from the 4th Congressional District in the Wichita area, South Central Kansas, on his take when it came to the omnibus spending bill on Friday.
There really is. There's a lot of information, but there's also a lot of misinformation, too.
Yes.
That's I think, keeping people upset when it's not necessary. I mean, yes, it's unfortunate that we're spending so much money. That's a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't like that. It was a struggle to make the vote to do that. One of the things we had to go through, I mean, again, going back to what you were saying earlier, is it's just a horrible process.
Sure.
That we're not going through regular order. We're not letting our appropriations committees sit down and analyze what our spending should be, and then laying that out and making amendments, passing it on the floor, doing it in an open and transparent process instead of doing this behind the scenes things. But sure. I want to particularly talk about a couple of things that are, there's some misinformation around, and a lot of people are throwing around the term that they've heard that we're funding Planned Parenthood in this bill, and that's not the case.
It's not. Okay.
There is no authorization to fund Planned Parenthood. Now, unfortunately, there's not also wording that says we will never spend any money with Planned Parenthood. What the Obama administration did was they used Title X grant money from the Health and Human Services Department, and they basically gave all these grants to Planned Parenthood. And what we've done with this bill is we've stopped what the Democrats wanted to do, which was just grandfather all of those grants to Planned Parenthood in. So we prohibited that. They can apply for those grants again. This bill does allow them to apply, but President Trump has said that he's going to have his Health and Human Services Department not award grants to Planned Parenthood, and instead he's going to offer those grants to pregnancy crisis centers and total realistic complete health care centers for their use. So it is true that there's not specific wording that
Sure.
Planned Parenthood is prohibited, but I'm trusting the president at his word that he's going to follow through on this and make sure that this money gets spent with good total health care.
Sure. And you mentioned in your official statement that came out early this morning, late last night, talking about this plan, but the Planned Parenthood portion of this, it goes to the discretion now of the presidency to decide what he wants to do with some of this money, which means that it's not going to be tied up through Congress, which would be extremely difficult for us to be able to defund it the way that we've talked about before, because right now, as you know, up there with the moderates and with so many Democrats still having somewhat of a control, that we would have a very difficult time defunding Planned Parenthood. Now, this bill gives the president an opportunity to do it kind of on his own, correct?
That's right. It does. And that's what he said he wanted to do. That's what he wanted to say, that he'd do that and make sure that it happened. When you pass a bill, you have to get it through both the House and the Senate. We could get that wording through the House. That would never get through the Senate with Schumer threatening another shutdown and just basically just not giving the votes to pass the bill.
Mm-hmm. You talk about, I played the clip earlier on the show. I don't know if you heard it or not, but I played the clip about when we talked just 2 days ago, and you had warned the fact that people are going to throw a bunch of nice little pet projects in the special interests, and because it's an election year, they're going to try and get things for their districts and for their areas. That's exactly what happened. And this is really nothing new with the 11th hour vote, with trying to cram it down with the scare tactic of the government shutdown, and the how dare that we actually shut down the government. We can't be doing that sort of thing. This is nothing new. This gives us the opportunity for all those pet projects that we just voted on this omnibus bill that we can start retracting when it comes to the appropriations process in a couple of months, correct?
That's right. And we can come back and like I said, get the appropriations committees to work on that in a straightforward manner and get that set up for 2019. There were a lot of things that brought up for funding that, this pet project or that pet project. I'm also pleased that some actual good progress came out of this on some of those things, funding for rural broadband and some of, fixes to some of the other problems that had been built up. So there were some good things in this, even though there were the bad. And so we're looking at how do we make sure we get those implemented for the rest of the year and done efficiently and effectively, because that's the other piece to look at is there's only 6 months left in the year.
Sure.
So I'm going to make sure that money's spent efficiently and effectively. And we did give the military some extra authority in terms of how they spend that to make sure it's just not spent willy-nilly just
Sure.
to get it done, but they can focus on appropriate things.
Absolutely.
I do.
Yeah, go ahead.
I do want to mention one other thing around. You mentioned earlier about the NRA and talking about the NICS reporting system. There's a little bit of misinformation around that as well.
Sure.
What this bill does is it actually enforces that federal agencies utilize the system that exists, make sure that the NICS system that is out there today is operational and functional. And so those are good things that are in the bill. Now, what we couldn't get worded into the bill is to fix a major problem that's out there that was created by the Obama administration, in that the Obama administration set up the rules so that the veterans, if a veteran had a fiduciary, maybe a son or a daughter who handled their finances, maybe their spouse even, that the Veterans Administration listed them on this database as somebody that not capable of owning and caring for a firearm. And that's just wrong. And unfortunately, we couldn't get the wording to stop the VA in this bill. We do have a bill pending before the Senate. We're waiting on the Senate to vote on it, that actually forces the VA to give people those rights back. But I think there's some confusion about the bill doesn't take away the rights. It just doesn't go far enough in this omnibus to stop that probably unconstitutional action that the Obama administration did.
Sure. So there were two different parts to the Second Amendment that caused some concern, at least from what I had heard from. And one of them, as you mentioned, was the fixed NICS. Now, was this the same fixed NICS that was originally in the National Reciprocity Bill, where they kind of joined the two together to move forward that way?
It was the same fixed NICS wording in that National Reciprocity Bill. The problem, one of the negatives, was the Democrats wanted to strip out the concealed carry reciprocity. So that concealed carry reciprocity wording is not in the bill.
Okay. Now, is there an opportunity for that one to come back up soon? Because I don't mind the fact that national reciprocity didn't get included in a budget bill. I'm okay with that, honestly. But I want to make sure that does go through. And I know the fixed NICS was kind of the negotiation or the compromise of giving the Democrats a little bit of what they wanted with the fixed NICS, along with national reciprocity, with is what the Republicans want. I'm hoping that stripping the two doesn't give us the opportunity to have the national reciprocity be shut down later.
I think we need to come back and put in the national reciprocity bill and let the senators vote on it. Let all these Democrat senators from these states that President Trump carried, so many of them, 7 or 8 of them, they're up for re-election this year.
Sure.
And let them vote against people's rights to have firearms.
Sure, absolutely. The second part of it that was brought up was the Dickey Amendment, which talked about funding for research on gun violence. Now, some thought that it was some way to be able to create some gun control measures, but the NRA came out and I read their statement about how it was nothing more than just clarifying that there's already money set aside in order to research gun violence, but it doesn't have any type of measure that allows them to create any type of gun control from that. Is that correct as well?
That's right.
Okay.
What you read, the NRA statement's right from what's in there. I mean, one of the things that, again, going back to the Obama administration, they wanted to use federal money to promote gun control, and they wanted to direct doctors to build a list of people that own firearms. When you're going through your regular annual doctor's checkup, and that doesn't fund that and allow that. It does allow some research into, particularly as it deals with mental health issues, and I think there's going to be more effort put in the country in general of how do we get back to helping people who have an issue, helping work through that, make sure that they get what they need, that they at least help understand how they fit in society and how they can continue to be useful people and useful citizens. Just even if things aren't 100% perfect. I mean, we all have ups and downs in our lives, but we need to make sure that we're working together in this.
Sure. No, absolutely. Congressman Ron Estes, first off, I appreciate you very much for jumping on such short a notice and giving us some details on this. There was a lot of misinformation that did float around there. It's still, as you know, and as you agree as well, that it's still not the best bill, and the fact that it still is $1.3 trillion and it was 2,200 pages of stuff that you guys only had close to 1,000 minutes to read and vote on. It's unfortunate that we have a process like that, but I've been trying to say this morning that this is not the end-all be-all for this one. This is the same old that we've been seeing for the last 10, 15 years. Anyways, now's the time for us to actually focus on the priority that we can have with the appropriations this summer that's going to make things a heck of a lot better.
That's right. We need to get back to regular order. We need to get our appropriations committees working, and we did get all of our 12 bills passed last year out of the House, but the Senate didn't take them up. So we need to start pushing that process again.
There it is, Congressman Ron Estes from the 4th Congressional District here in South Central Kansas in the Wichita area. That was his take on the bill after the vote on Friday morning. So we chatted with him. Appreciate him joining us. As I mentioned, out of the blue, he did not come on based on me reaching out to him, but just the fact that he wanted to clarify some things and talk about some of the fake news that's come out on this bill, and still not the best bill, but some decent parts of that on the reasons why it was good enough for him to support it, just in the fact that we can focus on down the road in the long term. Lots more to get to, your thoughts and calls as well. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
To the top of the hour. Welcome back into The Voice of Reason. Great to have you along today. It is a Monday. Let's start it off the right way. It is a dreary Monday, at least here in the Wichita area. I'm not sure in the western part of the state. It is a somewhat dreary Monday. It is still dark, although it is relatively nice and warm outside. 53 degrees here in Wichita, Kansas. Welcome aboard. 316-721-8255. 316-721-TALK. Your thoughts on the bill now that it's passed. The question I have for you, now that it's passed, now that the president has signed it, I want to know from you, are you to the point to where you're done and you're ready to vote out all of our elected officials now? Or are you saying, you know what, I'm on the fence here, I'm ready, but I want to see what they have to do over the next few months? Are you going to give them that opportunity after a temporary spending bill? Are you going to see what they do soon now for the appropriations, or are you already done? Are you frustrated enough and now you're not going to even listen to them? You're just done. And I understand to some degree on both cases, but I want to reiterate the fact that we have bigger fish to fry, baby. We have bigger things to focus on, and I really hope that that's not the end-all, be-all. There are some decent things. For one of them, I know it's been the talking point lately, the fact that we continue to fund Planned Parenthood, and that's not the case. They don't have any money allotted through the federal budget to Planned Parenthood, along with the opportunity for us to be able to allow the President of the United States to begin defunding it on his own and shut it down from federal subsidies, from federal grants, and be able to do all of it on his end without the Congress blocking and obstructing it. Let me ask you something. With the way Congress is set up right now, with Chuck Schumer having the authority that he does right now, with Nancy Pelosi having the authority that she does right now, with even the moderate Republicans, Paul Ryan, Mitch McConnell, John McCain, if he's even there, I don't even know, because he's probably still back in Arizona getting treatment, trying to still represent his people without actually getting anything done. With all of these moderate Republicans and with the control that they actually have, which is why we saw a bill like this, do you honestly, truly think that Congress itself right now would defund Planned Parenthood, shut it down, and block any type of federal aid going to the program? Do you really think that would happen? No, of course not. They're going to continue to say that we want to save lives, but we can't actually defund it because they do other things other than just abortions as well. Being Mitch McConnell. That would be their argument, and they would continue to fund it. They'd talk about their 10-year plan. They'd ask to be reelected. while they continue to fund what we don't want them to fund. It's time for us to do something about it, and giving the president the authority to cut off that funding means that President Trump could show up to the White House today and say, you know what, my friends, we're done. We're not going to fund them anymore. We're going to support the right to life. We're going to be done and over. It's going to be it. It's over. In Congress, Chuck Schumer and Harry Reid and all those other fanaticals are not going to be able to do a single thing about it. Then we actually have something productively done because of this bill. So we need to look at the bright side. I am the eternal optimist. I always look at the bright side of things all the time, and we need to do so and continue to do so even when it's the darkest of lights. It's very hard to do sometimes. I get it. When there's bad, frustrating things and we're very emotional and we're really worked up about certain things, I get it. It's very tough to stay positive and try and find the positive in there. There are some positives that we can look at. The fact is that there are no gun control measures in this. It is unfortunate they took out the national reciprocity, and I am a little concerned now about the national reciprocity getting off on its own and actually passing on its own with Congress now that they don't have the fixed NICS attached to it. They have passed the fixed NICS through this bill, which we weren't necessarily the biggest fans of anyways, but now we have national reciprocity on its own, and I don't know if it's going to be able to pass based on its merit by itself, especially now with the debate going on nationally with gun control. And do you really think Congress is going to pass national reciprocity now in the midst of a gun control debate where we want to ban bump stocks, we want to ban assault rifles, we want to ban automatic and semi-automatic rifles, and we want to ban XY just because they're really scary? And we saw the March for Life that happened, March for Our Lives, over the weekend, which was completely irrelevant. Look, I'm all for protests. I'm all for marching. I'm all for standing up and actually saying what you believe in and trying to change things. I get it. We need to have it, and I've mentioned this before, we need to have a defined message of what you're trying to fight for. Are you fighting for just school safety? If so, that's a very broad, generic term. School safety, okay. Or is it just for gun control? And every message that I saw, every sign that I saw at these rallies, every speech that I heard about these rallies, gun control, gun control, gun control, and more gun control. We'll talk about that when we come back. Hour number 2 right around the corner. Stay here. This is your show. As always, it's time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason. This is the Voice of Reason. Stay here.
It's time for Reason.
But if they disagree with you, then you're not actually promoting freedom of speech. You're actually promoting hate speech. Because in today's times, anything that offends you, that makes you feel uncomfortable, is no longer a freedom of speech, but is now hate speech. If you say, I love Donald Trump, that is now considered fascist hate speech because you're probably a white supremacist and you don't have any place in society.
This is the Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Then I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Oh, yeah. Welcome into the Voice of Reason, hour number 2 of the Voice of Reason, broadcasting live right here out of Wichita, Kansas on the Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM. We are simulcasting on KGPT TV, channel 2610. It is working now. We're having other internet issues, which are allowing us not to be able to have a Facebook Live feed going on today, but we are simulcasting. That is working right now. So if you want to check out the video feed, all you got to do is go to channel 2610 or on KGPT TV on your local cable right here. So welcome aboard. Great to have you along today. It is I cannot believe it already. It is a Monday as we try and wrap up the month of March. We get ready for Easter Sunday coming up next weekend. This year is going by way too fast. Let's set the tone this week. What do you say? Let's have a little fun.
Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started.
There it is, 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. If you want to join into the program, you're more than welcome to do so. We'd love to have you along today. Coming up on the show in hour number 3, we're going to have Travis Couture Lovelady. He is the regional director for the NRA, as we are the regional liaison for the NRA, as he's been fighting both at the statewide level and in following a lot of the national issues when it comes to the gun regulations. Kind of a hot topic lately as we see the March for Our Lives over the weekend, which is nothing more than, hey, we are very scared about your guns and we want to try and take them away from you. That's really what it is. Now, I got into many different debates on social media over the weekend with individuals who claim, no, we're not trying to take your guns away. We just want to ban common sense guns like assault rifles and AR-15s and that sort of thing. That's all we're trying to do. We're not trying to take your guns away. We just want to take the guns away that we don't like. And that's going to be our common sense reform. So then we'll never have a shooting ever again. We'll never be able to cause any harm with a mass shooting ever again, because then you won't have the really big scary guns that actually allow you to create a mass shooting. Do you realize the stupidity behind that kind of statement? The complete ignorance behind that kind of statement. Instead of looking at a case-by-case basis, which is the common sense school thing to do, look at each individual scenario, each individual case. There have been many shootings that happened in many different schools across the country, unfortunately, over the years. And none of them at all have been a single type of scenario. It's never been the same thing that's happened. It's never been the exact same thing that happened over and over to each one of those, other than the fact that it was in a general term, a school shooting. Different scenario, different mindset, different weapons, different results, different scenario for the response. I mean, come on, the shooting down in Florida happened with them pulling the fire alarm, letting kids walk out into the hallway and picking them off as they go. The last one that just happened in Maryland was a 17-year-old who shouldn't have had a gun in the first place, because it is illegal to purchase a firearm until the age of 21 there, which is what we're trying to do nationally, right? Because then that would solve all the gun crimes. No, 17-year-old that used a handgun, not an AR-15, but a handgun, and then we had an actual officer, a resource officer, that was able to shoot him and kill him within less than 1 minute of the shooting. That way no one else could get harmed. Funny how that worked. When we actually had another gun that was actually presented into the equation, and the odds changed a little bit. No one died other than that individual. And I think, did the girl end up dying? I don't remember. If so, then, okay, we had one victim, unfortunately, and it breaks our heart. But it's better than 17, right? And we could have potentially had that if someone else did not have a firearm wanting to stop that. So what's the argument to defend a movement that happened over the weekend, which is the March for Our Lives? That a Hodge individual, the student, quote-unquote student, I've heard many different stories about him, where he's actually what did they say he was, an actor for CNN or something, and we've seen him in different shootings around the country trying to play the victimhood and that sort of thing. Now he's the one standing up. He marched to Washington, D.C. They had the March for Our Lives, and he said, we will start the revolution, and our government has failed us because we are the victims. They need to do something. They need to act, and they need to take care of us because we are the innocent little children who do not know how to use a firearm ourselves, who do not know how to protect ourselves, and who do not know how to do anything else other than complain of the fact that the government's not taking care of us. That's not what that generation's about. That's not what any generation's about. We do not play the victimhood, or we should not. We have bright students. We have bright individuals. We have smart individuals and young adults. Some of them like to eat Tide Pods. Yes, he's probably one of them. But that's not the makeup of the entire generation. We like to poke fun of that just because of the fact that there are many of them that like to do those sorts of things. They like to play the victimhood. They like to use social media. I was watching last night Little Big Shots, if you ever watched that, and it really brought something to light. I noticed something that really was an eye-opener for me. I don't know if you watched Little Big Shots last night. If you did, there is a gal on there that played the violin. And she was from L.A., and she was 12 years old. And she was dressing and she was acting as if she was in her 20s. She was dressed up all preppy like a hipster. She had the big like Harry Potter glasses on. She was talking as if she was in their early 20s, and she was talking, I mean, she acted like an adult. She acted like an adult because she's from LA and she's a city girl like that. And everybody nowadays, if you notice that 12 and 13 and 14-year-old individuals, boys and girls, they don't act like they're 12 and 13 and 14 years old. What were you doing when you were 12 years old? You were running out in the field. You were playing in the dirt. You were wearing some cheap clothes, and you were just having a good old time. That's what you weren't dressing up like a hipster. You weren't going to clubs. Maybe you were playing instruments because you were in band or something, and that's great, but you weren't dressed and acting like an adult. At that time, you were still a child. So we have a generation that's very interesting where you act like an adult because you dress like them and you talk like them and you're very suave and you're very hipster and you're very cool like that because you need to be trendy, and you have the new cell phone and you have the new iPods and you have everything like that. So you're an adult, but yet we fight to prolong adulthood until the age of 30. We don't say that we actually consider ourselves an adult in general, statistically, until the age of 30 because of the student loan debt, because of the fact that we're victims, because of the fact that we prolong adulthood by saying we're not allowed to purchase a firearm until the age of 21, by saying that we can't drive a car until the age of 21, by not being on our own insurance until the age of 26 or 24 or whatever it is right now with before and after Obamacare. We prolong adulthood, but yet we want our teenagers to be adults, or even prior to teenagers. She's not even a teenager. She's 12. So we want them to act like adults without any of the responsibility of being an adult. Maybe that's why, and the light came on to me last night, maybe that's why we have so many adults who do not take responsibility of their own actions. Maybe that's a reason, one of the many reasons, why we're seeing shootings happen in different schools. Maybe that's why we're seeing individuals look towards the easy way out when it comes to maybe the abortion because they made the wrong decisions in their life. Maybe the suicide because they can't handle the stress of life. Maybe the drugs because they can't handle the personal responsibility of actually showing up to work on time and having quotas, because we act like adults, but at that young of age, we act like the adults, so therefore we think we already are an adult without any of the personal responsibility, and we never learn to consume that personal responsibility as we grow older, because we already think we're an adult. The adults treat us like they're best friends rather than our parents, and they think that they're all cool with us. They let us have parties at home like that. We dress like we're an adult. We have adult conversations on social media. We dress like it. We act like it. We're really cool like that, but when it comes to the responsibility, we never learn that aspect because we already act like we're adults. And then when stress of life hits us, like, I don't know, showing up to work on time and doing your job, when competition happens to move up the corporate ladder and it's just not given to you, when someone begins to bully you and you don't know how to handle it, whether it's on social media as a teenager or whether it's actually as an adult because people poke fun of you because people are jerks sometimes, whether it's the depression that sets in and you start going to a therapist, or you start taking pills, or you start doing drugs, and then you become addicted, and then you're a victim, and then people need to take care of you. See, it's the entire cycle. We've never learned and I'm not saying this is the entire generation, but it was really an eye-opener to me with a lot of these kids that acted very, very adult-like at a very young age, but they never learned the responsibility of what comes along as being an adult. And maybe that's another aspect that we need to look at when it comes to what's happening with these shootings. The high school student that was 17 years old in Maryland that ended up shooting his girlfriend because he had some kind of breakup and he was emotionally distraught, so he went in with the intent to do harm to his girlfriend instead of actually handling it appropriately. It's a fascinating conversation, and I guarantee you that during this March for Our Lives that happened over the weekend, not one single sign, not one single individual, not one single person across the entire nation, wherever these rallies were held, not one of them actually mentioned any of this, because it's all about the guns. It's all about trying to ban the firearm. I saw a post on social media that said that owning a gun should be like driving a car, which is not a right, but it's a privilege. And if you actually to meet the requirements to be able to enjoy that privilege, then all the power to you, but it should be just like driving a car. You don't have a right to drive a car, and therefore you should not have a right to own a firearm. It should be a privilege that's allowed to you based on your habits and based on your actions. That right there shows the mentality of what some of these individuals believe, where they don't care about the Second Amendment. And even though they say that they're not there trying to take away your firearms, at the same time, they're there trying to take away your firearms while saying they're not. How can you say that you're not doing something while you're openly advocating to do it? Because nowadays the progressives have openly said that we're going to lie right to your face. They don't care. They will lie right to your face. They've told you things for years and you believe them. The media's told you things for years and you've believed them over and over and over again. And now they've become so bold and so emboldened in themselves that they can literally say right to your face, I don't want to take away your guns. I just want to ban assault rifles. Wait a second. That's taking away your gun. No. We're not going to take away your guns. We support the Second Amendment. You just don't need an assault rifle. But that's the right that I had the person. No. You're just not going to allow to have that gun, but we're not taking away your guns. Do you see the hypocrisy in that at all? 316-721-8255. Let's go to the phones here, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Hello, this is Gary.
Hey, good morning, Gary. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fine, Andy. How about yourself?
Hey, we're living the dream.
Okay, well, quick comment. A gunless society won't protect a godless society.
Mm-hmm.
There's evil out there. The other quick comment is to talk about the children and our founders. They set the voting age at 21, and they was a lot smarter back then than we are right now. And when you was 21, you was a man back then, not a child like you are today.
Sure. Well, that's a great point. That's a great point. Now, I say that we need to literally have a serious conversation about what the limit is or what the age is to where we recognize you as an adult as compared to a child. We cannot. I don't like the fact that some things are 18, some things are 21, some things are 26, like insurance. I think that across the board, you're an adult now. It's time for you to buck up and grow up and become that adult, whether it's the age of 21, whether it's the age of 18, and it's across the board for everything, which means you're allowed to start driving, you're allowed to vote, you're allowed to buy alcohol and tobacco, you're allowed to purchase a firearm, you're allowed to buy your own health insurance. You're allowed to do everything. We need to set that age limit and say, this is the age. Now you're an adult. Have fun. It's time for your own personal responsibility. Now, we just need to sit down and figure out what that age is going to be.
Yeah, we definitely do. I think the voting age personally should be 21, and for the argument of, what about alcohol? Okay, if you want to join the military, then you can drink.
Well, there you go. Yeah, I mean, you can't buy alcohol to the age of 21, but if you sign up for the military, you can drink at 18.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hey, Gary, I appreciate it, my friend. Great points. Great points. We need to have across the board, and that way, this entire argument of saying, well, we need to raise the age of 20 to the age of 21 to be able to purchase a firearm. Say, wait a second, are you an adult at 18? Fine. I guarantee the Democrats would panic and lose their minds if we said, you know what, you're going to lose the entire young adult voting age because you're not going to be allowed to vote to the age of 21 because that's when you consider people to be an adult. And if they're not an adult before the age of 21, then how are they supposed to make the proper judgment by the age of 18? Now, you and I know that there are many very mature 18-year-olds out there that can make the right decision, but that's going to throw it back into the political face of the Democrats and say if you don't want them to purchase a gun at the age of 18, then fine. You can't sign up for the military. You can't drive a car. You can't purchase a cell phone. You can't sign up for social media. You can't vote. You can't do any of it until the age of 21. If you go to an adult site on the internet and instead of saying, are you 18 years old? No, it's going to be the age of 21. I guarantee you that media, that Democrats, and that progressives would freak if they ended up seeing that sort of movement just because they feel that students are not old enough or mature enough to buy a firearm until the age of 21. I'd love to see their reaction for something like that. Unfortunately, I don't see that ever happening, but it would be fun to think about to see their response to a movement that would start like that. Let's go back to the phones here, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
This is Jim.
Hey, good morning, Jim.
I'm doing great. We got a little rain going on, no fire hazard for a while.
It's beautiful.
What people need to realize, all of these proposals they're making, they are feel good. They make it sound like they're doing something. If they banned every AR, every SKS, every AK-47, everything that's semi-automatic, there was no more semi-automatic firearms. The old John Wayne 4440 lever-action rifle can hold 16 rounds of 44 Magnum.
Sure. I mean, come on, my semi-automatic 22 rifle I have at home holds 18 rounds.
Well, that's going to get banned because it's a semi-automatic.
Well, that's true. It's a semi. So even though it's a 22 and it's just a step up from really an airsoft rifle sort of thing.
The point is, there's the old saying, in the kingdom of the blind, the man with one eye is king. Mm-hmm. If a kid wants to kill people, he's going to go into the school, and the only thing that will work is to actually harden the school and work to get 20 or 25% of the school staff, including the teachers, armed with an effective firearm. In my opinion, all the teachers ought to have available to them an M4 carbine with a noise suppressor on it, so they can actually shoot it without making everybody go deaf.
Well, that's a point. Jim, I got to take a break here. I hate to cut you off, but you make a great point. And now, look, I'm not saying that only the teacher should carry the firearms. I just think that as long as we have more firearms in the equation, then it would change the odds. Obviously, look at the shooting in Maryland. We had the shooter that came in. We had a resource officer that actually had a gun and that chose to confront the individual, and that it was done within less than a minute, and only one person ended up dying. And that's the kind of odds that we need to have. Now, obviously, it would be even better odds if more individuals, janitors, or maybe the principal, or maybe some of the teachers, if they chose to, or whoever, ended up having a firearm, because that way the odds are changed with more guns against the one person that's actually bad. Got some more calls on the line. Stay here. We'll get to you as soon as we come back. This is The Voice of Reason.
You're listening to The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier on the Big Talker, KQAM.
Welcome back in. Let's go back to the phones here. What do you say as we go into the bottom of the hour? 316-721-8255, line number 1. Good morning. What's your name?
Good morning, Andy.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
My name's Paul.
Yeah. Hey, Phil. How's it going?
It's Paul.
Oh, Paul. I'm sorry. There you are. What's on your mind? What you got?
I was hoping maybe you could help me with some research I've been doing.
Okay.
Can you refer to one piece of law that was enacted based on what you call conservative values? And if I could, please, I'll take your response off on the air if you want to.
What do you mean? It's like any type of law that's conservative?
Yeah, more or less. Yes, that's simple.
Are you talking statewide? Are you talking federal? Is there a certain genre of legislation? I mean, what?
No, any type of law or enactment that has, benefited the average working person.
Well, more recently at the federal level would be the Trump tax cuts that happened right at the end of the year.
There's never been any proof that these types of tax cuts have benefited the average working person.
Keeping more money in your pocket's usually a good thing, and we've seen the economy come up because of it. I mean, we saw close to 3.5% GDP growth that's happened since Trump took office and since we've enacted the tax cuts. And it's always a benefit that when we see more money in our own pockets, we get to choose where we spend it, which means that we end up spending more money in the local economy, which helps local businesses, and businesses grow because they receive more money, which means that we're also spending more money on sales tax because we're purchasing more goods, which puts more money back into the statewide, local, and federal governments. So it helps the economy all around. When the government has all the money, we don't spend nearly as much money, and therefore we don't spur the economy nearly as much as what we potentially could have. So the most basic argument is, the latest that we've seen would be the tax cuts. I'd like to see a heck of a lot more of them, but right now we don't have necessarily conservative Congress.
Weeding through the fake news on a daily basis.
I hope now you boys see that this is totally serial.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason, 36 minutes past the hour. We love having you along today. It is a Monday. Great to have you with us. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Paul, in the last call, brought up an interesting point. Now, this wasn't the purpose that he was trying to get to, but he brought up an interesting point, was the fact that we have not seen a whole lot of conservative legislation coming through lately, have we? We really haven't. We have a Republican majority in both chambers at the federal level. We actually have a majority of Republicans in both chambers at the state level. Yet we're seeing very few actual conservative things coming out. Now, in the state of Kansas, We are proud of the fact that we are a very pro-Second Amendment state, and we have not allowed the latest national movements to try and block what we're doing. But at the federal level, even with the Republican majority and the Republican presidency, we're seeing very little conservative policies come out of it, which is a shame. Now, he was trying to use the point that what conservative policies have come out have been bad and that they haven't actually worked. For example, the Trump tax cuts. And I've tried to explain in many different scenarios the fact that lower taxes is good for the economy, and that we obviously see that. That's how we got out of the recession from Jimmy Carter with Ronald Reagan's massive tax cuts. And then this is really the first time that we've seen another major tax cut since then because, well, George H.W. Bush called it voodoo economics, didn't like it. George W. Bush didn't really care for it as well. He did a few little tax things around the corners, but he still ended up raising taxes. Donald Trump has been the first president really since Ronald Reagan that said, hey, we're going to do a massive tax cut. And then, of course, they try and say that there's no actual benefit from that, which is completely absurd. So we need to actually look and see some more conservative legislation. Let's push a national reciprocity bill. Let's push for the ending and the repealing full-on 100% of Obamacare. Let's push for another secondary tax cut, as what President Trump had mentioned. Let's start doing these things, and then we can see the economy do very, very well. We can see families actually coming back together. We can actually see things do very well. I would love to see that. We need some more conservative legislation. So I appreciate you pointing that out, Paul, because we need more. We need lots more conservative legislation, and then we can see good things actually happen. 316-721-8255. Let's go back to the phone tiers, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Andy, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Carl. How are you, sir?
Hey, I'm absolutely fine, but I need to take you down a little bit of Kansas history before you came to this state.
Okay.
Because the liberal Kansas Supreme Court, and albeit goes back a little ways before any of the current members were on there, basically said that the Second Amendment provision in the Kansas Constitution didn't mean what it said. And in 2010, the people and the legislature put on the ballot a specific, and I've got the language right here, in a provision for the Kansas Constitution talking about an individual right to bear arms and armies, and a person has a right to keep and bear arms for the defense of self, family, home, and state, for lawful hunting and recreational use, and for any other lawful purpose, and then goes on to talk about the danger of standing armies. This was put on the ballot for the voters to decide at a general election in 2010, and the voters here in Sedgwick County, almost 90%, voted in support of this new language that overturned the liberal Kansas Supreme Court edicts on this subject. And statewide, the vote was almost 90%. And that becomes, this is a very inconvenient fact that no one in the gun debate, at least here in Kansas, wants to talk about, that the people have clearly spoken. Now, having said that, you're absolutely right in terms of the national issue, but the argument has been made, especially by left-wing law professors, that the Second Amendment in the federal Constitution doesn't refer to a right of the people, like, say, the First Amendment or the Fifth Amendment or any of the other Bill of Rights amendments. It's some sort of a collective, only governmental right for the Army. But here in Kansas, the Kansas Constitution is very explicit, and it's had overwhelming public support. The tragedies that have occurred and the atrocities that have occurred in the shootings that have taken place, basically the damage has been minimized in the areas where there were good people, like in Maryland and down in Texas, where firearms were used to stop the perpetrators, and actually. We are in an environment where that there is a need for if good men and women do nothing, evil will prosper. But the protections we have in this debate and that are contained within the Kansas Constitution are quite clear. Now, I wouldn't surprise me if our current left-wing Kansas Supreme Court will try and chip away at this if any cases come before them.
Oh, they're
at this
itching
point,
to see
they're
it.
struggling to handle other issues, and they're so far behind on their docket that's a disgrace, but that's another topic.
Oh, sure, but they're loving it.
This history.
They're giddy about it. They'd love to see some kind of gun case come up to their table, because they'd love to be able to just, as you mentioned, chip away at those rights. And you're right, we have distinct laws here in the state. We need to be able to use those as an example for federal legislation that's going to be happening, because now we see even Trump wavering a little bit, saying let's go ahead and ban the bump stock. We have individuals coming out. I mean, they literally said this is numerous people that came from the different marches around the nation over the weekend with their social media accounts pretty much saying, we're not trying to take your guns away, we just want to ban assault rifles. It's not about all guns, but it is about gun safety and trying to stop violence, which by default just means we need to take away the guns. So they're openly, very boldly saying, we're going to take your guns away, even though we're going to tell you we're not taking your guns away. And oh, by the way, you owning a gun should be like driving a car, where it's a privilege and not an actual right. They don't even care about the Second Amendment. That's their mentality, and that's what they're going to fight for, because to them, that is common sense legislation. To them, when they talk about common sense gun reform, when they talk about common sense gun laws, that's what it should be, is that it should be a privilege, not a right, and therefore we need to ban everything that we deem as scary and big and unnecessary, and then we'll pick and choose on who's actually allowed to purchase whatever else is left.
Well, that's why being enshrined in the Kansas State Constitution is important for your listeners to know and to recall the fact, and albeit I think a lot of your listeners out there probably voted on this back in 2010, but it doesn't get much attention because it doesn't fit the liberal media narrative of that the firearm is the problem, as opposed to good people. It's inanimate objects. We've had problems. The September 11th, 2001 massacre, the Boston Marathon massacre, the Austin, Texas murders from just earlier this month, none of those involved using anything involving a firearm.
Of course not.
And so the fact that we've got evil people in this society, and we've got people with severe problems who not only should not have firearms, they shouldn't be able to drive motor vehicles. When we had the case, I think in New York recently, where a terrorist, Islamic jihadi, drove a truck down a pedestrian bikeway and killed a bunch of people. And there have been worse events like that overseas. We live in a time and place, and I agree with you that we need to be on offense, or you're going to be playing defense, and the national reciprocity should be there. The Republican leadership in Congress, the passage last week of the Schumer-Pelosi budget, and I regret that I was going to try and call you Friday, but ran out of time because I called the White House urging President Trump to veto the bill, and unfortunately he did not. But it would have been very Reagan-esque if he had, because Reagan did exactly that back in the 1980s under similar circumstances.
Sure.
But,
yeah, it would have been nice to see him veto that. Now, he did say that this was going to be the last one that he ever signed that was like this, which is encouraging. But I don't know, a lot of people may have already said, yeah, you know what, we've heard promises before, and you signed something we don't really like. So I don't know how much damage that he's already done to himself. I try and make the case that, it's only a 6-month bill, and it's not nearly as important as some of the stuff coming up soon. But at the same time, a lot of people are very angry at him for signing that one. So we'll have to see what happens.
Well, the key point that I think is for your listeners is to make sure that they stay in touch with their elected officials in Washington, and you can contact their local offices. Senator Moran and Roberts both have offices in downtown Wichita, and Representative Estes' office is over on East Kellogg here in Wichita.
Sure.
And it's an easy phone call if you don't feel like dropping a note by. I would prefer dropping notes because I think having written communication, has a bigger impact on elected officials, but that's just my opinion. Andy, you have a good day.
I love it, Carl. I appreciate it very much. 316-721-8255. It brings up some good points. First off, we need to stay in touch with our elected officials, and second off, we need to be aware of the issues, and we need to treat them appropriately. Look, we have a state to where we do defend the Second Amendment for the most part. We've had our issues there as well, especially when it came to the Second Amendment Protection Act that kind of fell through with the Supremacy Clause, which is completely bogus and a whole nother conversation. The question I have for you with all of these discussions, both with the guns and with Even if you remember some legislation of about a month or so back where the legislature in the state of Kansas was trying to say that if you're in a car accident and you're not wearing your seatbelt, that you're partially liable for the fact that you weren't wearing a seatbelt for that protection when it comes to medical issues, because you could have prevented your own medical issues to some degree by wearing your seatbelt during the accident. And there's a lot of different cases like this. The question I have is when it comes to the industries themselves. I saw a story that Remington is actually filing Chapter 11 bankruptcy. They're filing bankruptcy as a company that I believe would be doing very, very well right now, especially with everybody going out and buying firearms, because they're afraid that they're going to be repealed again, that they're going to be turned away, and that you're not going to be able to find them. They're going to be hard to get. They're going to be more expensive, and then people are going to flood out and buy firearms. Barack Obama was one of the greatest firearm dealers that we've ever seen, because he had talked about wanting to get rid of guns for years, and what happened? Everybody went out and bought firearms. And Remington filing bankruptcy. Why? Because of ongoing litigation since the Sandy Hook shooting. People going after Remington for the fact that their product was being used in a school shooting or in a shooting. And it boggles the mind. I mean, if you eat, let's say, M&Ms, if you eat Twinkies all the time and you end up having a heart attack because you have a poor diet, do you sue the Twinkie company? Do you sue Hostess, which is now bankrupt? Maybe because of more litigation, I don't know, but whoever's making Twinkies now, do you sue the manufacturer because of the fact that they made a product that made you sick because you ate too many of them and you got a heart problem? Do you sue a cigarette company because you smoke their cigarettes and they warn you with a big old label on there saying that you might get cancer because of this, and you smoke it and then you get cancer and you sue the tobacco company? Is it the manufacturer's fault for your lack of responsibility with the material, with the product that they come out and they sell you? Remington filing Chapter 11 bankruptcy because of the fact that they've had ongoing litigation since Sandy Hook, and it drained the business. It's unbelievable to hear something like that. I mean, that's like me coming out and saying that I really like Cheetos, and therefore I'm going to eat Cheetos for the rest of my life for every single meal, and then I gain 50 pounds or 80 pounds or 100 pounds, and then I have a heart defect because I get a heart murmur or something in the case like that, and then I end up having a heart attack, and I say, you know what, Cheeto Company, I don't like you anymore. You made me fat, you made me sick, and now I'm on my deathbed because of you, and I had a heart attack and I need a heart replacement. I want you to pay for my medical expenses. Are you kidding me? Oh, yeah. Maybe the shooting, maybe the handgun that happened with the shooting in Florida or in Maryland, maybe we need to sue the manufacturer for that gun company, right? This is the agenda, by the way. Talk to an individual who's advocated for these gun restrictions, for these gun rights being taken away. Talk to them. And sometime in the conversation, I guarantee you know what they're going to bring up? The big gun industry and the profits of the manufacturers, and how they want these shootings to happen, how they want these discussions to happen, how they want you to go out and buy all these crazy guns when you don't necessarily need them. And it's not because of your own decision-making saying that you want to purchase these firearms to defend yourself, but it's the big gun industry, like the big tobacco industry, like the big corporations, like the big whatever. They're very, very scared about businesses that actually create products that you purchase. Now it's about the profits of the gun industry. And this is the latest attack that they've actually come out with. It's mind-blowing to actually hear this, and saying that while we're talking about gun safety and talking about school safety, the one issue that they're concerned about is not the children. It's the fact that they hate the profiteering of the gun manufacturers in the conversation, because while we're all scared about guns, they're making a profit, and they don't like the fact that these businesses and corporations are making a profit. Who cares about the children? We need to ban the gun because the gun is actually making the company profit by making the gun that you want to buy. Can you believe the priorities of these individuals? 10 minutes to the top of the hour. Let's take a break, wrap up hour number 2. This is The Voice of Reason.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into The Voice of Reason. Great to have you along today. About 6 minutes at the top of the hour. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. We'll continue this conversation a little bit. Travis Couture Lovelady, the regional liaison for the NRA, going to be joining us at the top of hour number 3. This portion of the Voice of Reason brought to you by the AARP, whether it's the Fraud Watch Network, the Retirement Calculator, trying to prepare yourself maybe for taxes, getting involved in the community, wanting to become a caretaker, does not matter. They have the information for you. Check them out, aarp.org/KS for the state of Kansas. Marin Turner back on the line with us on a Monday. Marin, how are you today?
I'm just fine.
Hey,
how are you?
Oh, we're living the dream. Great to have you here. It is a moist, rainy day outside, which is nice. I love it because maybe we can start seeing some of these fire threats go away. That'd be kind of nice.
Oh, that would be fabulous.
Oh,
yeah.
Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah. You talk about, and I love you guys have a huge anti-fraud and Fraud Watch Network program to where you try and stop some of the fraud happening. You try and make people aware of some of the fraud that's going on in the area. And you came out with a study that shows that the young generations, for whatever reason, are actually more susceptible to online fraud than the older generations. Is that correct?
Well, it's kind of surprising. For the first time, the Federal Trade Commission published a network data book that included details on fraud losses broken out by age groups. And to my surprise, at least, millennials, those in their 20s, are more often the target and the victims of fraud than people over the age of 70. And there are a number of reasons why that could be so. You know, millennials are more likely to do more things online, including banking and paying bills. There's some evidence to suggest that maybe younger people feel like they're not as at much risk as older people because they're a little bit more savvy when it comes to online applications. Another reason is because millennials don't always open their bank statements and read them and track what's going on with their accounts. And they're more likely to download free applications and software. So that was sort of surprising to me, at least, and I don't know if it's surprising to others.
Well, it is surprising to a degree. I mean, it is, but it isn't, because you're right of the fact that we use social media and we use the internet more frequently, so we're more open and vulnerable to the online fraud that goes on and the hacking and some of the things that happen. On the other end, it is surprising in the fact that with the older generation that may not be as familiar with online, that when they do go on, then they're easily more susceptible to becoming targets for fraud, or if they open up an email because they don't know the signs to look out for when they do go on there and they try and set up an email account, or even when they're, whatever the situation is, it is surprising that the older generation maybe doesn't have more fraud cases like that, but at the same time, I guess it does to some degree, or the young generation does use it more frequently and they just, are a little more relaxed and feel a little more comfortable not thinking that it would actually happen to them. So it's interesting to see one on both sides.
Well, yes, I think you make an excellent point. And the point that we've always wanted to make is that people of all ages, all backgrounds, all ethnicities, all educational levels can be victims of fraud. And so we're doing a lot to try and help people to save their money and not become victims. We have a number of tips through our Fraud Watch Network. I would invite people to dial 1-877-908-3360 or log on to our website at www.aarp.org/KS.
There's a lot of great information out there, and I'm so glad that you guys follow that with your Fraud Watch Network. The other portion of that is that, especially now during tax time, I know that we've talked about this before, but the number of people that get frauded out of their tax money, or the people that get the phone call saying they're with the IRS because you maybe haven't filed your taxes yet, or that you have late tax payments or that sort of thing. I'm sure that you've seen an increase of those types of calls around this time of year as well, haven't you?
Well, we absolutely have. Unfortunately, there are people that specialize in tax fraud, and so
Sure.
We'll be offering another Shred Fest next month. In May. We'll have a truck that will be at a nearby Dillon's in Wichita, there to take your sensitive papers that you've collected for your tax filings. We'll be able to destroy those on site. So that's one of the things that we're doing to help people to protect themselves against fraud.
Very good. We got about 30 seconds left. Marin Turner with the AARP. Again, how can people get a hold of you guys if they have any questions, or if they want your help on maybe getting ready to file their taxes?
Well, you can call us between 9 and 5 at 1-866-448-3619. We'd love to talk to you. Or log on to www.aarp.org/KS.
I love it, Marin Turner with the AARP. Have a great week. Happy Easter to you until we talk to you next week, and we'll look forward to chatting with you next Monday.
Thank you, Andy. Happy Easter.
Always a pleasure there. Marin Turner with the AARP, proud sponsors here on The Voice of Reason. We appreciate that very much. Hour number 3 right around the corner. When we come back, we're going to talk with, we've been talking about the gun debate, obviously, with the March for Our Lives that happened nationally over the weekend, the great gun debate that's been happening, and some of the gun legislation being pushed here in Kansas and the surrounding states. We'll talk about all that and more with our regional liaison for the NRA, Travis Couture Lovelady, former state representative here on The Voice of Reason. Lots coming up. Your phone calls as well. We need to hear from you on all these topics. It's a great one as we promote conservatism on a daily basis. Stay tuned in hour number 3 of The Voice of Reason.
It's time for Reason.
But if they disagree with you, then you're not actually promoting freedom of speech, you're actually promoting hate speech. Because in today's times, anything that offends you, that makes you feel uncomfortable, is no longer a freedom of speech, but is now hate speech. If you say, I love Donald Trump, that is now considered fascist hate speech because you're probably a white supremacist and you don't have any place in society.
This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
When I get on my knees and pray, we don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again.
Oh, yeah, welcome into The Voice of Reason, broadcasting live out of Wichita, Kansas. Hour number 3. It goes by way too fast on this show, even without internet. Can you imagine? It's crazy. Even without it, we don't have the Facebook Live going on today just for the fact that we're having internet issues. We are on air, obviously. The Big Talker, 1480 on the AM side, 102.5 on the FM side, KQAM. We are still streaming and simulcasting on KGPT TV on the local cable, so you can watch that no matter how you want to. But welcome aboard hour number 3 on it's a Monday. Trying to get you pumped up for the week. Trying to get you ready for a holiday week coming up. Really the first major one since the beginning of the year. You rightly deserve this holiday. Let's have a little fun this week. What do you say?
Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here.
There it is, 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Lots to get to this hour. Open up lines to you on your thoughts on anything that's been happening. As you know, the threat that President Trump tried to have at the end of last week, saying that he may potentially veto that big $1.3 trillion omnibus bill, ended up signing it, saying that he would never sign something like that again, but understanding that moving the needle forward in order to talk about appropriations, have our focus on the right things in mind right now, as opposed to only a 6-month spending bill. Right now, the 6-month spending bill is not the most important thing that we could possibly do. Then we saw over the weekend the March to Save Our Lives, which is not a march to save our lives in any way, shape, or form. It's the march to say, please take my firearms away from me, so therefore I can be completely vulnerable and I can play the victim because I don't like guns and guns are really scary. And guns, if we just ban them, then all of a sudden people will stop having them, and then we can actually stop shootings, which obviously is never going to happen. So we'll talk about a little bit that, get your thoughts and take on that. The late legislature in the state, they've been trying to respond as they've tried to vote on certain legislative issues, trying to raise the purchase of firearm age to the age of 21 by trying to have the 3-day waiting period, by trying to ban the evil assault rifle and the big scary ones. And there's a lot of legislation that's been popping up that's been, number one, surprising that's been happening here in the state during an election year. The other surprising part of it is that we would go to that extreme. We are a very pro-Second Amendment state in the state of Kansas for the most part, and for us to even try it, now obviously it didn't happen, and we thank our legislators for not allowing that to happen, but it's very fascinating to watch that they actually even attempted it. So on the phone with us, I'm really excited. We have not had him on the show in a while, and I think it's appropriate with all the discussions happening right now. He is the Regional NRA liaison. He's also a former state representative for the state of Kansas. It is Mr. Travis Couture Lovelady back on the line with us. Travis, how are you, my friend?
Doing well, Andy.
Hey.
How are you today?
Hey, we're having more fun than we should be. That's just the way we roll. It is a Monday, and it boggles the mind, and it fascinates me, and it scares me, and it intrigues me all at the same time with these national movements where it's just common sense how we just have to ban firearms, where they say they're not banning firearms, but at the same time try and say that, AR-15s and all the assault rifles and semi-automatic rifles are not protected by the Second Amendment, and how you just don't need them anyways because you don't hunt with them, which is completely ignorant anyways in itself. But still, we need to do something, because if we just make these guns go away, Travis, then all of a sudden, then we'll never have another shooting ever again, ever.
Well, it's actually interesting to watch them actually be honest more lately. They always said before, oh, well, we don't want to take your guns. You guys are just extremists and your rhetoric's over the top. We're not really going for that. Well, listen to some of the speakers over the weekend. It was, you give us an inch, we're going to take a mile. So, yeah, they're being pretty honest with what their end goal is, and that's Australia-style gun confiscation. So we have to be vigilant. We have to be heading back.
We do need to be vigilant. You're absolutely right. We need to be aware of what they are doing. While they say it bold to our face, we're not going to take your guns away, they're working on trying to ban the ARs. They're trying to ban the assault rifles, which, again, I don't want to use the term assault rifle because really a gun can't assault you. But at the same time, that's what they're trying to argue. We saw what's his name, David Hodge, the high school student that was speaking in Washington, D.C., saying that he was going to start the revolution, and they have failed us. Congress and D.C. has failed us, so we're going to take it into our own hands, and we're going to do our own thing. And I just don't get their mindset other than the political activism. So let's talk about the state of Kansas, though, at first. The state last week or 2 weeks ago, they went on with about 5 different resolutions wanting to raise the age of purchasing a firearm to the age of 21, wanting to have the 3-day rescission or the 3-day waiting period if you try and purchase a firearm, trying to repeal the carry on campus, trying to repeal this, repeal that. The question is, the good news is it didn't work. Is it going to be tried again?
Yeah, well, the good news is it didn't work. The scary thing is that it was fairly close, even in Kansas. Some of these votes, the amendment by Senator Lynn Rogers, which would have banned not only bump stocks but any trigger modifications. So when you could possibly go ahead and take that thing and liberally interpret it, and any sort of modification, any gun could have been used on a lot of those things, especially the bigger Dianne Feinstein version at the federal level. And so that one was a 20-20 tie. So it's those kind of proposals were close. The 3-day waiting period only lost by 6 votes. 21-year-olds was 27-13. Repeal of campus carry was 19-21.
Wow.
So the repeal of constitutional carry 16-24. So these things weren't blowout. Only Democrats voting for them. There were a lot of Republicans voting for these insane gun control amendments too. So it was good. It was great to see in tough times the senators that did stand up for our constitutional rights, and they should be commended. But man, it's important that we stay active and stay after them.
Why do you think that it was so close with these votes? Was it because just the scare of what's happening nationally with the environment and with the discussion happening nationally, or are we starting to expose maybe some of the moderate Republicans who had an agenda like this, but they didn't want to really go on record with it? Because especially during election year, I would think that they would try and shy away from some of these gun votes because they don't want a bad rating from the NRA. Going into an election year, unless they don't care about the NRA any longer and they don't care about the massive amount of individuals in the state of Kansas that actually have guns and are pro Second Amendment. Why do you think it was so close?
Well, yeah, a little bit of both. There's obviously an emotional reaction right now. There's people not thinking logically; they thinking with emotion, and the media is driving that pretty hard. So you have some of that going on inside the Capitol, and you know how those things go on any number of issues when you take out logic and only insert emotion. But yeah, your point is also well taken, that a lot of these folks were not fully vetted on a lot of these issues. In the last election, there was a wave election, and they were able to skirt through on other issues and not be fully vetted on gun issues and some of these other conservative principles. And yeah, they're voting what they believe. So yeah, they are absolutely being exposed for their true beliefs on gun rights.
You kind of being the regional liaison for the NRA, and do you work with many other states as well, not just the state of Kansas, but working with different state legislature on different legislation they're trying to promote? What's the feel from the other states? Are they kind of in the same boat as we are, to where they're very iffy and very scared and wary about the Second Amendment right now? Are they actually advancing and doing something positive in that sense, or are you seeing some of the other states go in the wrong direction?
Yeah, a lot of the coastal states are really going hard left right now, pushing all of these things. I mean, these aren't new ideas. These are things that they've pushed in every state, and it's kind of the Bloomberg model is to take these sort of issues and slam them through. And we're lucky to live in Kansas where we're able to stop it, but a lot of these states on the coast are not able to do so. In our region, though, Oklahoma is doing pretty well. They're pushing forward on a lot of good bills. You remember in Colorado how that goes out there.
Sure.
They they're pretty split governments, and neither side is making much headway there. But in Wyoming, we did pass a good stand your ground law. They had a duty to retreat in Wyoming, which was just hard to fathom that, and we were able to extend the castle doctrine out to public. So a good, strong stand your ground law with civil immunity, so you can defend yourself, and that was pretty exciting. And those folks, and they stood strong. They only have a 1 month session essentially, and so they don't have a lot of time to sit around and wait. They had to keep on working hard and pushing forward, and they did so even in tough times with the media bearing down on them.
Sure.
So there's a lot of people out there who have been really strong on our rights and pushing forward, and a lot of our people are asking questions and digging deeper. What can we do? This is scary. They're exposing the leftist anti-gun agenda, and really, it's time to get involved, and they're absolutely right.
Well, that's very true. I mean, it's time for us to stand up and actually make something happen. I know that we usually like to be the calm, laid back, don't get involved in sort of things, just kind of keep a tabs on it. But right now, we really need to make our voice heard, especially in our state legislature, because some of these votes may be back soon. I know that before we had a decent bill that started in the state legislature when it came to state reciprocity, but then they tagged on a whole bunch of crap too, and it wasn't worth it, including the try to repeal and carry on campus. What kind of legislation do you see coming back up in the state of Kansas before the end of the session? Is it going to be some of the negative stuff with trying to repeal carry on campus again, or might we see some positive things, maybe like a state reciprocity bill?
Well, yeah, that bill is actually in conference committee today. So the Senate was able to strip out the ban on constitutional carry on college campuses, which was good. So we just have to hold them to it in conference committee. And then that bill, as it passed the House, it also had a good thing in there. It lowered the permit age to 18 for concealed carry permits to encourage young folks to go out and get those permits and be able to carry on campuses. And that was pretty exciting. But then, of course, after Parkland, that kind of hit a wall, and things have been pretty quiet on that front. But that's still sitting there. There's still a possibility. It's in conference. So we'll be watching the conference committee today to see what they come up with.
Sure.
But we definitely need everybody to stay active and involved, and you can follow our NRA alerts sign up for those on nraila.org, and also the Kansas State Rifle Association sent out an email alert about the conference committee and all the big votes that have happened the past few weeks and what's coming up. So ksraweb.org is also what we need you to sign up for to be extra involved on the state level. But we also have, of course, Facebook, everything else to stay active and involved and informed. It's really important to know what's going on, because I know it's hard, but we do our best to try and get that info out there, and appreciate you allow me to come on and talk about it too, because it's pretty trying times.
Well, it is. It's extremely important. It's very troubling. It's concerning of the fact that we have individuals that are very openly now saying, heck with the Second Amendment, we're going to do what we want to, and we're going to start banning firearms across the board when it comes to the semi-automatics, the AR-15s, the whatever else they want to say and demonize and make really bad. And then, I mean, they try every angle that they can to try and chip away at the Second Amendment. If they don't succeed in trying to ban the gun, they'll go around and try and ban how many weapons you're allowed to have in your home, or how many pieces of ammunition you're allowed to have, or how many magazines you can have, or the capacity of the magazine. So it's a never-ending battle. And right now they think that they're on the winning upward downhill battle now, I guess, because they have such momentum. That's just not the case, though. And as long as we stay active and alert, then I think that we can actually move this in a positive direction by getting more legislation in its pro-Second Amendment as opposed to the anti-Second Amendment legislation. Last question before we let you go. We're talking with Travis Couture Lovelady with the NRA, the regional liaison for the NRA, and a lot of the school safety debates that have been happening right now. I know that the legislature's also been talking about like the Eddie Eagle program that the NRA comes out with. Ohio came out with the SAFER program that's also endorsed by the NRA. Have you seen any of that type of legislation about education and potentially more firearms by trained individuals within the school districts to try and help stop any type of shootings that way when it comes to school violence? Has there been any legislation, not just in Kansas, but in the region that you kind of work with? What's been the discussion in that sense?
Yeah, we were actually working on Eddie Eagle with Representative John Whitmer even long before anything this session. We were working on that last year too, so it's been something we had talked about for a while, trying to get more firearms education into the schools. As far as after this, and Kansas is one of the few states kind of in this region that don't allow teachers to be armed, and it's been sad to see because we did pass it in 2013 in the big bill that had campus carry and all that in there, Public Building Security Act. And so right now these local school boards can vote on it to arm teachers and staff and make their schools safer, but none have done so, and they've used the threat of insurance to scare these school districts into being able to vote to do that. And so there's some bills addressing that. Representative Blake Carpenter has a bill up tomorrow in the House Insurance Committee that attempts to look at some of those issues, how they can shift that liability so that the schools that do choose to arm their teachers or staff are able to do so without fear of losing their insurance, or their insurance getting jacked up so they couldn't afford it anymore.
Wow.
So yeah, there's a lot of things floating around on that, and it's something that needs to be done, and we're following and looking into it, because if you really want to talk school security, there's some real solutions out there that can really make a difference other than just these feel-good emotional reactions to ban things.
Well, come on. Maybe we need a bigger sticker in the window, or maybe just like we have the bear that warns us about fire safety, we need to have a big cuddly bear to hug as we walk in the front door, and then everybody will put their guns down and we don't have to worry about shootings any longer. Maybe that's what we need to do.
Really, really big sticker. There you go.
There we go. Travis Couture Lovelady, the regional liaison for the NRA. Travis, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, my friend. Keep up the fight. You have a lot of support here on the home front, as we like to make sure that our guns don't go anywhere. So appreciate what you do. And I want to talk to you again at the end of the session to kind of do a recap of how this whole thing went down.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have a lot to talk about at that point, I'm sure, going into an important election year. So be happy to come on anytime.
Very good. We'll do that again real soon. That's Travis Couture Lovelady with the NRA. We'll talk to him again in just a few weeks. Let's go ahead and take a break. We'll wrap up the show. We'll get your thoughts and calls. It's open lines to you for the rest of the program. 24 minutes past the hour. This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into the Voice of Reason right here on the Big Talker KQAM. Thanks again to Travis Couture Lovelady, the regional liaison for the NRA, working with the state legislatures on legislation to defend you and I on a regular basis. Have you ever heard somebody say that because you're such an advocate for the Second Amendment and for the gun that you care more about your right to own a firearm than you do about your children. Heard that many times before. I'm actually in the middle of a discussion with that on somebody on social media right now. You care more about your right with the right to carry a firearm and own your gun than you actually do about your own children. When they don't now this person obviously does not have a child themselves, so they don't understand that you would do anything to defend them, including actually having a firearm to protect your family and your child from someone wanting to cause harm, because they see it as two completely separate things. If you own a firearm, then you obviously don't care about your children. If you care about your children, then you don't want them to be around firearms. They see them as two exclusive things, and that just shows the complete naiveness and ignorance that comes with the progressive mentality. So we'll talk about that when we come back. It's open lines to you for the last half hour of the program. Anything's on the slate. I do have a little bit fun, lighthearted story that we will talk about as well as we wrap up a Monday, starting off your tone, starting off the right way. Have a little fun today on a dreary, wet, rainy Monday morning. It's going to be a good one. Let's kick it off for a holiday week. What do you say? This is The Voice of Reason. Stay here.
I can see myself tearing up the road faster than any other boy has ever gone.
When taxes go up, so do our tempers.
Oh my God, no!
Fighting for Kansans every day. This is The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Welcome back into The Voice of Reason. Wrapping up the show today. It is a Monday morning, 36 minutes past the hour, starting your day the best way that we know how to. I get it. I totally get it. It's a Monday morning. You're struggling. It's kind of a dreary morning, which means it's even harder to get up and go in. Let's start you off the best way we know how to. This show is better than a cup of coffee, a shot of espresso, even an energy drink. That's the way we roll right here on The Voice of Reason. Welcome into it. 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. Facebook Live not working today. First time actually in a long time that it hasn't, as we've had some internet shenanigans that have been happening here. But don't worry, we're still on KGPT TV if you want to watch the video. And we're, of course, here on the radio, AM and FM, as you're driving to work, as you are getting to work, no matter where you may be. You can always check us out. It's open line to you for the last half hour. What's on your mind? 316-721-8255, 316-721-TALK. John on Facebook. Since Remington's being sued, as I read the story, Remington actually filing Chapter 11 bankruptcy after the years of litigation since Sandy Hook elementary school shooting. Why they're going after Remington, I don't know, because it's the mindset of the progressives. Not only is that the fact that it's a corporation, an evil corporation making a profit, but it's making a profit off a product that kills people. They are making a profit off of a product that ended up harming someone. And it's not the fact that it's a tool that can be used for good or for bad, but it's the fact that it's an actual product that is used that causes harm, and that's the purpose of that. And therefore, they need to be responsible for every child. Do you see that there's a new movie out, Winchester? And I don't know if I want to see it or not, just because I don't know about the fact of the whole like ghostly spiritual thing. I don't like to be around that stuff after what happened prior. But nonetheless, there's a movie, and the history goes, is that the wife of Mr. Winchester back in the day, you may know this story, became a little nutso when he died, and that she was seeing ghosts in the house of everybody that was killed by a Winchester. And obviously, since the Winchester family is very wealthy because they created a product that's very well known, that she continued to build on and expand her house for years and years and years and years and years, and ended up creating hallways that would lead to nowhere, stairwells that would go into nowhere, doors that you would open that would be to walls and that would be random places, because her goal was to confuse the spirits that were in the house trying to haunt her, and therefore she wanted to create chaos in the house so that way the ghosts would be confused and they would try and leave her alone because they would be lost in the house. And now they've made a movie of this Winchester, so we're now finding new ways to subliminally try and demonize the gun industry with Winchester making this movie, which I don't know, it may be a fascinating, interesting movie, I don't know. And now with the story about Remington, who's filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy because of the fact that they've been having years of ongoing litigation because of the fact of people suing them after Sandy Hook. and now they're filing bankrupt. I wonder if we could file bankruptcy, or I wonder if we could sue any car dealer after you had a car accident. There may not be a recall or any defect to it. It's just you had a car accident and it's the car's fault because you will never take responsibility into your own actions. I wonder if we can sue the company now making Twinkies, since Hostess is out of business, probably because of more litigation from people suing for heart attacks. If you sue the company making Twinkies because of the fact that you gained a lot of weight because all you did was eat Twinkies and you had a heart attack. I wonder if we could sue any of the school districts or any of the safe places that have gun-free zones that will not allow you to carry a firearm where there is a death because of a shooting in that gun-free zone. Would we be able to sue them? Let's turn the tables back on them. What do you say? If we end up suing someone to say, you know what, we have a gun-free zone, there was someone that came in with a gun that obviously did not abide by the sticker. They ended up creating a shooting and someone died because of that. Let's go ahead and sue the company for not allowing me to defend myself by being allowed to carry a firearm. Can we start turning this back on them? Because now we're seeing many of our gun manufacturers have to fight that fight. Hillary Clinton came out and made the statements a long time ago. It said that we need to hold the gun manufacturer reliable and accountable for the actions of every shooter that happens. I wonder if we should say the same thing for the city of Chicago for their crazy gun laws to where you're not allowed to carry a firearm within the city limits of Chicago and yet has the highest homicide rate in the entire country. I wonder if we could actually create some type of lawsuit against the city of Chicago and say that you're racist and you don't care for individuals of minority descents because you will not allow them to protect themselves with firearms, and they are the number one victims of homicides in the city of Chicago because of your ridiculous, crazy gun laws. Can we do that? I mean, we are the American dream now, litigation and lawsuits, so why the heck not? Let's give it a try. What do you say? 316-721-8255. Let's go to the phone tier line number 1. Good morning. What's your name?
It's Wallace.
Hey, good morning, Wallace. How are you?
Not too bad. How you doing?
We are having more fun than we should be every day.
There you go. You know, you'd mentioned in the previous hour about, raising the age to 21
yes.
and all the ramifications. Something that just kind of dawned on me. Imagine if you did that, raise the age to 21. Now parents who are divorced are going to have to pay child support up to the age of 21.
That's a great point.
Your protections, you don't have any protections on your health, your health records until 21.
Sure.
You can still access it. Those are some things, but something else that just jumped out. That kid David Hogg that's been all over the news.
Yes.
I kind of refer to him as a beta male, but this kid, they asked him about, well, how is he going to graduate and still run around and do all these anti-gun rallies? And he basically said, well, the school's kind of working for him, working with him, but he responded by suggesting his school should work harder on, quote, equality for all. This is a quote. He said his school is 25% black, but his AP classes have only one black student for every 30. He described that ratio as disgusting. So my question is, here's David Hogg, the beta male, who refuses to turn in his smartphone and abandon social media in order to prevent the 4,500 cyberbully suicides every year. He refuses to do that to save 4,000 auto texting accidents every year. But here he has the opportunity to say, you know what, I will give a less qualified black student my spot in an AP class. Maybe he ought to say, why is that ratio? The ratio is not disgusting. Maybe there's just not enough kids that be minority students, in this case black, that qualify for AP classes. It's not the school's fault. Maybe he ought to wants to see this is his
But
problem.
remember, it's the victimhood again, and it's the school. And the schools, as you know, obviously are very racist in the sense that they don't like individuals of any minority descent, whether it's black or whether it's Hispanic or whether it's Asian, to actually move forward with their schooling and with their education, because it's all about the white kids, and therefore all the schools are all racist, and we need to do something. Just like how the government is is not taking care of him and actually addressing the issue of gun violence, which is what he's out parading about and trying to talk about and trying to campaign on, just like how the government has failed him in that sense, the institution of the government has failed him in the education system because they are not forcing individuals of different minority groups to go into an AP class, so therefore the ratios are completely equal because it's not about the merit or even about their interest. It's about forcing them to go into that class just to make the ratios look a little better, so that way we can say, hey, look, we have a lot of minority individuals going into an AP class, and therefore we are a wonderful, caring, loving school district.
Well, why won't he turn around and just give up his spot? See, this is the thing is, and the other thing I would love to see a school do is if I used, David Hogg's mentality, the school ought to come out and say the next student that gets caught cheating on a test, the entire school flunks. We're taking it out on all of you. This is the same thing that's happening now. See, he wants to blame the school for blacks not being able to get into AP classes in a high enough percentage. He wants to blame lawful gun owners and the NRA, which is funny. I see these signs saying, this is just, the NRA wants to sell guns. The NRA doesn't sell guns.
Well, you're right. They don't sell guns. Here's the mentality. Here's what they believe. And you've heard this many times before is when we create rules, let's, for example, when we create a rule, but there are a few exceptions to the rule, everybody thinks that they're part of that exception, so therefore nobody abides by the rule, right? This is the way that progressives and socialists believe in their mentality, is that they believe is that everything needs to be equal and everything needs to be fair and no one needs to be higher than anybody else except for the lawmakers at the top and the government and the bureaucracy and those that actually can regulate to make sure everybody's equal. The problem is, though, is that every member of that socialist progressive mentality thinks they're part of that dictating law, so therefore they are above everybody else and then everybody else is below them on an equal level. No one wants to actually live by the rules that they want to create for everybody else.
Well, no, that's exactly it. Socialists is for the people, not the leaders.
Yeah, of course not. And David Hodge is the same mentality there by saying, like you said, why aren't you giving up your seat for another black individual to be able to be in that AP class? Is because he thinks that he's entitled to be there, and it should be one of those jerks that maybe is a gun owner or a conservative or a Republican that is in that class that probably needs to give it up because he has accepted his white privilege and he has accepted what his ancestors may have done as a problem. So therefore, someone who hasn't maybe come to that conclusion needs to give it up because they don't deserve to be there. So he is above the law that he wants to create for everybody else in that classroom. That's exactly why he's doing it.
Well, and we've, Andy, this isn't a new phenomenon. We look around, and when you hear these kids spout this nonsense about white privilege, you know what? There's no carve out at a company for diversity to hire white people. There's no carve out at colleges to say we have to enroll more white kids. As a white person, as white privilege, I have to succeed based on my qualifications and my character. I don't get a quota. I don't get anyone saying we have to be diverse. So if white privilege means I have to get ahead based on who I am, what I've accomplished, what I bring to the table, and not a box that needs to be checked, well, then so be it. But we've seen this. Police departments have lowered their standards in order to get more qualified or more minorities to qualify.
Oh, it's not just the police enforcement. And Wallace, I want to take another phone call, so I appreciate it. But you're right. It's not just law enforcement. Look, I mean, you go to a government agency and you try to apply for a government agency. My dad worked for the Department of Transportation in Colorado and had applied for improvement, tried to apply for salary increases or promotions or different positions within CDOT in Colorado, and it was the same thing that they had to check off the list for certain minority groups or affirmative action or whatever. And you're right, it's in government agencies, period. It's trying to be forced into a lot of different corporations and businesses to where, oh, you're not complying with the fact that you have a happy ratio between men and women or whites and Hispanics or whites and blacks or whatever. So you need to start looking at, well, wait a second, the person that applied maybe didn't have the qualifications. It doesn't matter. That's not their fault because they didn't have the same opportunity. So therefore, you need to give them that position so that way you're fair across the board. That's the way society's gone, and it's in government agencies, it's in the private sector, and now again, that goes into the idea of you going to work every day and still not having the government on your back. Oh, they're there. They're watching you. They're always there, and that's what they like.
Winning.
Let's go back to the phones here, shall we? Good morning. What's your name?
Hello.
Hello. How we doing?
Fine, Alan. I thought you might like some background on the Winchester situation.
Sure.
I lived there for over 30 years, and what they're talking about is what's known out there as the Winchester Mystery House.
Yes.
And it's largely a creation of the company, the corporation, that took it over to turn it into a profit-making amusement. And the story has been badly distorted because it drew people in.
Mm-hmm.
And Sarah Winchester was widowed at not an early age, but not an old age. And
sure.
She had so much money. We've heard the numbers, and it was thousands of dollars a week back, around the turn of the century.
Sure.
And the woman just was fabulously wealthy. And the real story from all the accounts of newspapers and people that knew her and things like that was that she was very wealthy but reclusive, and she was lonely. And all the stuff about the spirits and whatever was just ballyhooed. She built this incredible house on Winchester Boulevard and Highway 280 now, just to have people around.
Just to have people come and see the spectation of the big house. Just to have the workmen come and have company. Oh, just to have the construction companies just come and be building stuff, so she's not lonely. It's a great story. I love that. And then I'm sure that somewhere along the line, then they started, changing it to, she was lonely and she was scared about the ghosts that were coming to haunt her from everybody, but then died by a Winchester, and therefore she was trying to confuse. So I'm sure along the line somewhere, then you're right, the stories may have been twisted. I just found it ironic that at the same time we're talking about the gun legislation is the time that we have a movie come out about the spirits of the Winchester house. So I found that kind of funny.
Well, this never existed until I believe it was, again, Rather Corporation took it over, and then ballyhooed it. The basis of how they were able to do it was she had all kinds of filigree and carving work that were things like spider webs and stuff like that, and it just allowed them to amplify this.
Gotcha.
Okay. I'm not saying she was totally sane, whatever, but I mean,
sure.
the real story apparently was that she was simply lonely, and this brought many, many workers around, 5 or 6 days a week, and she has enough money that there was no end of it.
It didn't bother her. How fun! I love that.
No, this seems to be the true story of it.
Okay, I like that story too. That's a great one, Alan. I love that. I appreciate that very much. And then, of course, we like to exaggerate things in media, and we like to exaggerate things in Hollywood. And we like to exaggerate stories and make them something that they may potentially not be. So I love that very much. I appreciate it. Let's take one more phone call before a break. Good morning. What's your name?
It's Dan.
Hey, good morning, Stan. How are you?
Hey, good. Thanks, Andy, for a little conservatism on my way to work.
Hey, appreciate it.
Well, I have a statistic that, they're missing out on if they want to sue somebody now. Over 17 people every day in America are killed by drunk drivers. Mm-hmm. Now, assuming half of those are the drunk driver, but half of them are not. They are innocent people. Here's a product legally obtained, a car and alcohol, but then mixed together and abused by the user turns into a weapon. So don't they want to sue like Chevrolet and Ford Motor Company because they are weapons, and even when they're misused?
You would think so.
Yeah, but the problem is how many people have a car? The people with guns aren't going to say, no, we don't want guns, but the people who don't have guns say, no, let's get rid of them.
Well, exactly.
Now, you poll the people that don't drive and go, oh, yeah, I think the car's the problem. But it's absurd. It's the same paradox. It's the driver, the user, the person that abuses that item that's causing the problem. And in society, we deal with it in the proper manner. We have counseling. So it's absurd. If 6 to 8 people died every day due to guns, that would be outrageous.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, they use it as that political agenda. They see the opportunity. I mean, look, I tried to use the argument that right now we have, on average, yearly between 15 to 20 students that die from guns. A young adult under the age of 18, anywhere between 15 to 20 young adults a year die by a firearm, whereas opposed we're talking about a percentage of the teenage population when we talk about suicide of teenagers because of social media bullying and online bullying. Why aren't we talking about trying to ban them from social media or trying to talk about ending bullying online? It's not happening. And I don't hear I don't hear them out on Washington, D.C. crying and saying we need to ban social media and ban the evil, mean things that people say on social media because it leads to a not just a 10 or 20 a year, but a percentage of the teenage population that commits suicide because they're in a depressed state from online bullying. Why aren't we talking about it?
It's because of the item. It's because I've got to have my phone.
Well,
I've got to have the internet.
And if we talked about raising the voting age to 21, and if we talked about banning social media for young adults, and that would lose their entire brainwashed voter base down for the young generation to actually say something stupid like saying that they understand the Second Amendment and want to ban guns.
I know, and it's just I just don't know where it's going to come full circle one day, but I'm hoping that common sense prevails. I think it will.
Well, I hope so. One of these days. I appreciate it, my friend. Have a great Monday, and I appreciate the phone call very much. So great points. Let's take a break. Wrapping up the show today. 7 minutes to the top of the hour. This is The Voice of Reason.
The Voice of Reason with Andy Hoosier.
Boy, I can't believe it. The show's gone by way too fast today. It's always a pleasure to talk to everybody. I love all the phone calls, all the discussion. Let's do it again tomorrow. What do you say? Advancing conservatism on a daily basis. That's what we're all about. That's what we do. And that's what we need to keep doing, because as soon as we let our guard down, they take another little chip away, and then it just makes it more difficult for us to actually fight to get it back. As always, this is your show. It's time to speak up, speak out, speak loud, speak proud, speak the truth, and always speak some reason, baby. Tuesday's right around the corner. Get through your Monday. It's going to be a great one. This is The Voice of Reason. Have a great day, everybody.